Welcome back to the EPRS Chronicles in our series on Latin America. In episode 1, we talked about the geopolitical importance of Latin America and why the EU is looking to strengthen its relations with the region. In this episode, episode 2, we are going to look a little more in detail at the influence that China has over the region. For this, I am joined by Mark Uten and Angelos Delivorias, both policy analysts for the External Policies Unit of the EPRS. Hello, Mark. Hello, Angelos. Thank you for being with me. And Mark, let's start with you. So in episode 1, we learned that the EU is currently losing ground to China in the region. What exactly does this mean?
It is increasing its political, but also trade relations. Let's start with the trade relations. If you look at the picture, China already today has overtaken the EU and is Latin America's second biggest trading partner after the US. And focusing on South America, there the position of China is even stronger. It is today the biggest trade partner of South America, before the US and before the European Union. I would like to give you some numbers. According to the World Economic Forum, Latin America's bilateral trade in goods has grown over the past years 26-fold, from $12 billion to $315 billion in 2020, and it is expected to grow even further, to double the trade relations by 2035 to over $700 billion.
That's a very impressive figure. How exactly has China achieved such fast growth in the region?
Well, one element in their strategy towards the region is completing its network of trade agreements. They have right now trade agreements signed with Peru, Costa Rica and Chile. And Uruguay is negotiating a trade agreement with China, and Ecuador is about to sign an agreement. So they are right now complementing their network. And why are they doing this? They are doing this because the main point of the FTAs, which China is concluding with the region, is to increase their quantities of soya beans, of copper, oil, lithium, and other raw materials which China needs for their industry and the energy transition of the country.
And you also mentioned that China is deepening its political relations with Latin America. Could you expand a bit further on that?
Absolutely. A milestone was probably in 2016 when China established the China-CELAC-Forum. That is something similar to the EU-CELAC summits we have. They launched it, as I said, in 2016. The last one was in 2021, and they met on a regular basis. In 2021, they adopted a concrete action plan, and they set a roadmap on how to increase their relations politically, by promoting political and security cooperation, by increasing trade and economic relations, but also in the aspects of social and cultural matters. They want to put their relations on the next level.
And aside from signing these free trade agreements, what other steps have been taken in the region?
Well, for example, President Xi, he traveled 11 times to the region since he took office in 2013, which is quite an impressive number, I mean, only to Latin America. And another element which was also very important to Latin America was in the COVID pandemic, they delivered more than 300 million doses of vaccines to Latin American countries, while the European Union only delivered 125 million.
Thank you, Mark. Aside from the political and trade component, China is also investing more heavily in Latin America than ever before. So now I turn to you, Angele. Can you tell us a little more about Chinese investments in the region?
Right. So China indeed has increased its investment over the last 20 years. In the period 2000 to 2020, they have invested approximately $160 billion. Only in 2022, they have invested approximately 8 to 10 billion in Latin American countries. At the same time, the same year, they have invested approximately $8 billion in the EU and $5 billion in the US. Now, the fact that they have invested more amounts, let's say bigger amounts in Latin America than in the EU and the US is quite impressive.
That is indeed very impressive. What exactly explains this huge amount?
Well, two main reasons. The first reason is the fact that countries in the region have less stringent investment screening frameworks in place than what we have in the EU and the US. But the main reason, obviously, is that Latin American continent is a continent which is rich in resources, agri-food, fisheries, energy, minerals. So China has been investing in those areas to power its manufacturing sector and also to make its green transition, to help itself in the green transition. So right now, the main investment by Chinese companies in the state is in electricity generation and distribution by renewable resources, like, for example, hydro or wind. Minerals, of course, lithium that Mark mentioned before. Transport infrastructure, like the metro in Bogota, for example, and manufacturing and services.
With so much investment and therefore influence coming from China towards Latin America, should the EU be worried?
Well, worried that we're going to lose them completely? No. I mean, relations, just as Mark mentioned before, go beyond mere financial considerations. There are also political, cultural, and other factors. It is true, though, that the economic presence of China in Latin America has been growing, and has been growing a lot over the last 20 years. However, we need to be careful because there are three different sectors where that presence has been growing, and it grows at different speeds. Trade has increased exponentially. It is very important right now. They have displaced us. However, investment is still contained. It's still small, the percentage of investment by Chinese companies in the continent. In the 20 years, let's say, between 2000 and 2020, it was about 6%, whereas the EU and the US accounted for approximately 8%, right? Currently, I think the numbers are 37% for the EU, 35% for the US. So China comes third. But there is a third element in this economic presence in the continent, and that is, of course, official loans. Mm-hmm. And that is another area where Chinese presence has been expanding over the years. The two main policy banks of China have invested over the last 15 to 18 years approximately 140, 150 billion dollars in the continent in the form of loans, which have created some concerns because they come with various strings attached. To summarize, we don't lose Latin America, but it is a very important moment. It is a critical moment, and this can also be seen in the various proposals that we have adopted here in the EU, because it is a great opportunity for the European Union to turn towards and get into closer relation with an important partner, with a partner with whom we have significant relations and tight relations over the years, and a partner that we need to secure our energy security and the move towards our green transition.
Thank you, Aguilar.
Thank you, Kelly.
This concludes our second episode in our Latin America series. Join us for our third and final episode, where we will examine why importing critical raw materials are a particular priority for the European Union. Meanwhile, do subscribe to the EPRS YouTube channel so you can stay up to date and watch the most recent videos.